guys, it's Sam, and this is my spoiler-free review of Goddess of the River by Vaishnavi Patel. This is a standalone adult mythology retelling. This is from the same author who wrote Kai, which she is doing retellings of Hindu epics. So I am not super familiar with these epics. There are a few things that I am familiar with from like pop culture references and things, but not as much. So I cannot speak to like what things she's using and changing and the ways in which she makes it unique, but she does have notes at the back of the book for like, here's which translations I used and which things I changed and which things I didn't and like why I did that, which I think is a really cool reference point as well for the things that she's pulling from. So this book primarily follows a goddess. This is the river Ganga. She is a river goddess, and she at the very beginning of the book is basically like called down to earth by people, but then one of the other gods basically is like, you can't do that because you're going to destroy the world if you do that, and like traps her in a river. And then things go from there. She ends up eventually being trapped in human form and having to birth children because she is cursed by a sage because her like little godling spirits that hung up by her river did something bad. There's like stuff around that where that's like not entirely accurate, but she has to do that. So there's a lot of like dark themes here. There are trigger warnings for like infant death and infanticide, partner abuse, and misogyny. But through that experience, she experiences some like mortality, and then there are ramifications of all of that too, like of choices that she makes during her time as a human and how people like respond to her. And then you get her going, you know, back into being a goddess because she is a very, again, big part of this Hindu epic. And you also later in the book follow one of her children and involvement in like history and in this epic and things. So I love these books. Like if you really enjoy like Madeline Miller, what Madeline Miller does for Greek mythology, Vaishnavi Patel is doing that for Hindu mythology. She fleshes out these characters, she fleshes out this world. It is all very magical and there's a lot of like political machinations and things, particularly in these books. But like as far as the world building, I always get a good sense of like the gods and mythology and stuff. Again, this is a culture that I'm not like deeply familiar with, but I have some cultural reference points and like media reference points for some of these things, but she really like fleshes all of that out without you feeling like you have to go and Wikipedia everything, even though I do after because I'm like, oh my god, trust the actual story here. And what did she change and what did she not? But like that's really fun. I always like following these kinds of godlike characters and the way it's translated and like the way in which her character arc and things go is really interesting, which I'll get to in the character part. But like the machinations and like the political machinations and how all of that is set up is pretty easy to follow. As far as like characters and stuff, which I will segue into in a second, but there are parts in the second part of the book that there are so many names and so many people that got a little bit muddled for me, but that's probably because I just am not as familiar with the cultural reference point of the epic. But there were just like a lot of people in the second half. It's very political heavy. But as far as our characters, Ganga, obsessed with her. I love her so much. This is really a story at its core about boy moms, but not in a toxic way. Like boy moms that are trying and just like the influence of mothers on society in a way that people might not fully understand the full ramifications, and mothers trying to do their best in a world that is very much driven by men. And what do they do in the choices that they make and how do those then impact the men that are making these big decisions? But like Ganga goes through so much from being like a newer god to being sort of like an angry god to being a human and wrestling with the god versus human like and mortality idea. I don't know if you can hear that banging. I'm pretty sure that's my neighbors playing with their dog and they're like bouncing a ball on the floor. It happens like every day. I really loved her. And I did like a lot of the side characters that kind of come in and out. There are some that are more fleshed out than others, but I enjoyed some of like the interweaving of her with like their stories. And I really just enjoy in general when people retell myths and they pull like other parts in that maybe weren't exactly in that order, although these characters maybe didn't meet, but like making them meet in this way and cross paths is like so much more interesting and compelling from a narrative aspect. So I really enjoyed that as well. So yeah, like plot wise, I enjoyed like how all those elements were woven together. I think Vaishnavi Patel's writing is very beautiful as well. I listened to the audiobook and the audiobook narrator is really good. And yeah, I feel like I heard a lot about Kai and then I didn't really hear a lot about this one, and this one is just as good. These are both very good. Kai was one of my favorite books of last year. This is one of my favorite books of this year. Definitely 5 out of 5 stars. If you enjoy mythology retellings of any type, you will definitely enjoy this one. So comment below, let me know what you thought of Goddess of the River. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.